to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch-Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Lindsey Bluth-Baldwin, Certified Athletic Administrator, the Director of Athletics at American Prep Academy in Draper. Welcome to the podcast, Lindsey.
Thank you for having me.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our Utah audience and audience around the world where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, etc.
Sure. I am an Oregonian. I grew up in a small town just south of Portland. It's called Molalla. There's about 3,000 people in town. I had about 100 kids in my graduating class, so I'm very familiar with how a small school works. In that town, my parents owned a grocery store, so we kind of knew everybody. Everybody knew us. I worked there pretty much my entire life. After high school, I attended Western Oregon University for a couple of years before transferring to finish up my degree at Utah Valley. And it was Utah Valley State College then. It's Utah Valley University now, as we all know, but probably just dated myself just a little bit. I graduated with a bachelor's in elementary education and a master's degree in elementary reading and literacy. And then after graduation, we returned to Oregon, worked as a substitute teacher for a few years before I started having kids. And then when we moved to Utah in 2008, I began a preschool and have been running that for the last 17 years, in addition to coaching and being the AD. So I keep pretty busy with that too.
Perfect. So I'm showing my ignorance here. What city is Western Oregon University in?
So that is in the metropolis of Monmouth, also a very small town. It's about, I don't know, a half hour outside of Corvallis, where Oregon State University is. It's about an hour from Portland, an hour from the coast. So it was a small college campus as well.
Perfect. And then what was it that brought you to UVSC at the time?
So my brother had just returned from a church mission and was attending Brigham Young University and convinced me just to make a change and come and go to school where he was. And that was kind of the catalyst. While we were here, not too long after, my parents sold their grocery store up in Oregon and my siblings settled here. And so the whole family just kind of migrated this way. And I don't really have much family up in Oregon anymore. We all like to be together and are right here close to each other here in Salt Lake County.
Perfect. So talk about if you had growing up in a small town in Oregon, what opportunities you had to play female youth sports there was.
Well, there wasn't a lot of female youth sports. When I was growing up, everything was co-ed. I was thankfully a tomboy and didn't mind playing with the boys. I remember playing 3-year-old soccer. I have a brother that's 12 months younger than I am. And so for the sake of probably convenience, my parents put us on the same squad all the time. So I remember one friend of mine, Becky, and I would play with the boys my entire growing up years until about 6th grade. Basketball kind of segregated as far as genders go. But Molalla had the youth soccer, we had the T-ball program, the youth basketball, kind of did all of the things that they have now. A little bit different, I'm involved in the club basketball program up here, and I know how specializing is kind of a thing now with kids, and that wasn't a thing back when I was a kid. Everybody did everything, which I kind of miss. So I did all the things. I played soccer, I played T-ball, I played basketball, and all through middle school and high school. I played high school volleyball, basketball, and softball as well. So kept pretty busy doing all of the things.
Perfect. So were you well enough versed in the sports to play collegiately?
No, I honestly didn't have much of a desire. And I'm not saying I would have been good enough. I don't really know at the time. I kind of, just wanted to get on with my education at that point. Pursued an elementary education degree right away. I did get involved in a lot of kids do the intramurals in college and found that to be super fun. That was a good time to do those things. So I did a lot of that, but I also jumped into coaching right out of high school. And so kind of started my path on the coaching aspect not too long after high school graduation.
And so, what sports did you begin coaching right out of high school?
Basketball has always kind of been my thing. So when I was at Western Oregon, it's about 20 miles outside of Salem, which is the capital. I had a roommate that was coaching at a high school there, and I jumped in with her, and we did the freshman basketball team there for a year. And then when I moved to Utah Valley, my roommate at Utah Valley was coaching at Timpview High School. And so we started coaching there together as well. And that kind of Timpview was more my leaping off point. I think I ran the freshman team there, and then kind of continued coaching until I started having kids. Took a break from it, and then jumped back into it as my kids got a little bit older.
Perfect. Let me ask you a little bit of a personal question here, Lindsey. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
Gosh, there are so many lessons to be learned from things that didn't go well. But from the sports perspective, going back to those Timpview years, I vividly remember a girl on the sophomore team. And Timpview had a very strict policy when I was there. The head coach put a policy in place is pretty simple. If you miss practice, you don't play the next game. That was the policy, bottom line. And I was pretty hardcore with sticking to that policy when I was there. And I do remember there was a freshman girl there who was, consistently at practice, never missed. And for whatever reason, about 2/3 of the way through the year, started missing practices. And, at the time, I'm like, well, policy is don't play. No practice, no play. And, give me 25, 30 years of life experiences. I wish I would have gone to her and found out the reason and explored that a little bit, because as time went on, we found out that her father actually was on hospice and ended up passing away, and she just didn't, frankly, have a right to practice. And had I known that at the time, that hardcore approach probably would have been softened quite a bit. And that experience has stuck with me since that time. I'm all for accountability. I am all for dedication and commitment to teams, but I have learned, especially from that experience, that kids who don't typically, let's just say, miss practice, or who don't typically skip out on team things, there's probably a reason for it. And let's look into that a little bit more before we just assume that they're not there because they don't want to be there. So that's, like I said, something that has really, really stuck with me. And I try and take that approach with kids even now.
That is some great insight. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I want to talk a little bit about your background now, because from just our brief discussion here, your road to become an AD was probably a little different than most of the ADs in Utah. So why don't you talk about that? We did talk about your coaching, so I understand that side of it. But how does an elementary person and someone who runs their own preschool get drafted to become the athletic director at APA?
I became very involved with my oldest daughter's basketball from an early age. I, started coaching her rec teams, and we were looking for a club program for her in junior high school. And when she got to junior high, APA was not sanctioned UHSAA at that time when she was in seventh grade. So she was able to play in a charter league with kids 7th through 12th grade. And so I became kind of one of the coaches of that. And at that time, Brian Durst, who was the athletic director at APA at the time,
Right.
he was my boss, and I got to know him over the years. And as we became sanctioned and became a program, my now husband is the head boys and girls coach at Draper APA. But I was in his office once talking about junior high sports, and I jokingly had mentioned to him, like, I would like to have your job someday. And, we both kind of laughed about it. But fast forward a couple of years, Brian is now our district athletic director over West Valley and Draper, both campuses. And so when he took on that role, he came up to me and asked me if I would like to take on the campus AD. So it was always kind of just a joke between the two of us for a while. But when the opportunity opened up a lot earlier than what I had anticipated being his retirement, I just love athletics. I love working with kids. It just seemed like kind of a natural thing to step into.
Perfect. Let's have you. Uh, so how? Let me establish this. So how long have you been the AD at APA, Draper?
This is I'm in 4.5 years right now. So I started mid-year about 4 years ago. So not super
All
long,
right.
just long enough to try and think I'm starting to
Sure.
have things figured out a little bit.
Long enough to figure out in 4.5 years, how has the job of athletic administration changed, or how much is it the same?
Well, I think I don't know, at a small charter school like ours, it's probably a little bit different than some other places. So one of our biggest challenges is just retaining kids at the school. We are surrounded in Draper by Corner Canyon and Elton, Jordan and Bingham and Riverton and Harriman. I mean, they're all a stone's throw away from us. So being academically rigorous like we are and having all of the things that go along with a charter school, the carpooling is not very fun for parents. It's rough. It takes a long time to drop kids off and pick them up. You have to be pretty dedicated to be willing to do that. The homework load can be intense. The kids wear uniforms. We have an absolute no cell phone policy. So it's one of those things where kids really have to choose to want to be there. And I have teenagers. I know kids naturally tend to want to choose an easier path. It's just kind of natural. And so when you have
Sure.
this a little bit more difficult path, a little bit more homework, a little bit harder classes, you have to wear a uniform, all those things, or the public school where some of those things don't exist. I mean, they have their own hard things there too, I'm sure. But a lot of times kids will choose the easier path, which is understandable. But it's always going to be a challenge of ours retaining athletes somewhere where it's a little more difficult to be. So for us, that's one of the focuses that we've really tried to do in the athletic department is to create an athletic culture that kids don't want to leave. So whether, they have a little more homework or it takes a little longer to get on campus, the athletics for our athletes make it fun enough that they want to stay there. So for me, that's one of the things that our focus has been over the last I mean, I've only been at AD for 4.5 years, but I've been pretty involved in the school for the last 8. That's something that we're really, really focusing on.
Thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you now how you became aware of the UIAAA and your journey in becoming a member and getting to know some of the fellow ADs.
I really honestly had no idea it existed until, it's just one of the things that Brian Durst introduced me to when I first started this job. And he told me that that would definitely be something that I would want to be involved in and be a member of. And there's a couple of things that I really appreciate about this organization. First of all, I appreciate opportunities for continuing education. So it's been great in introducing different courses you can take and making sure that, the things they have in St. George and the conventions that are learning opportunities for all of us to partake of. I also really appreciate the networking aspect of it. I have met a lot of really great people through this organization, and I like intermixing and mingling with people who are in the same position I am, especially when a lot of these athletic directors have so much more experience than I do. Just this organization has allowed for the communication between me and some of these more experienced ADs so that I can learn from them. So that has been fantastic for me.
Let's have you talk about your attendance at some of the UIAAA conferences then. Expand upon that more than what you just mentioned.
Well,
What's
I
it
do
like
appreciate,
being there?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, what's it like being there for someone that's newer? Like you asked
Well,
me, but I've been
sure,
going to the conference since, 1985, so
right.
it's a little different for me. So
I
I'm
haven't been
interested
able to
on,
attend every year, but I have been able to, that first initial is a little intimidating, being new. But everybody is very, very welcoming. And that's one of the things that, again, I really, really appreciate about all of the athletic directors that I have met is that they are so willing to share their knowledge and their experience. And talking to a few athletic directors from different regions, what challenges they have and what things they face, and how to help me manage things that we face and the challenges we have. It's just been fantastic.
perfect. Let me ask you now about your recent, by the time this airs, it'll probably be 3 or 4 weeks old, but you recently received your certified athletic administrator, which is a big deal in our business. So talk about that, talk about your journey to become certified, and talk about the importance of becoming certified.
Again, that's not really something I was it's kind of funny. I mean, when I have thought about athletic directors in the past before I actually became one, I guess my mind immediately goes back to the high school athletic director I had who would just perch on a stool at the end of the basketball court with his arms folded, scowling as the kids were doing their thing. And for a long time, I think that's what I thought athletic directors did is they got to go watch kids play sports all day long. And that's pretty much all that they did. But I think anyone who has been involved in this knows that that's just a tiny, tiny, tiny part of it. And so working, I have learned that being an athletic director involves so much more. One of the first things is really having to be organized, right? Like you really, really have to be organized. Thankfully in my life I am. And so that's helped me out a ton. But if you're not super organized, to surround yourself with people who are, that can really, really, really help you along the way.
Okay, and so what made you then I know Brian is certified, so did he encourage you to take that certification route and that's how you got started?
Yeah,
Uh,
and that's again one of the things that I wasn't even really sure existed until Brian did bring it up, and encouraged me to go ahead and start looking into doing that. And then the conference or the classes that are offered through, your organization, that got me started on it. And I've always kind of it's always been natural for me to want to get to the top of whatever I was doing. So when I graduated from college, I wanted to get the master's degree. When I got this job, oh, there's a certification I can get. Yes, I want to make sure that I get that. And so I started working on it. The first year, honestly, I was treading water. I didn't work on it a whole lot. I started working on it a little bit my second and third year. And just like you mentioned, just finished it up recently. I learned a lot from the classes that they offered, a lot of things that I didn't think about before. And again, going back to like my high school athletic director sitting on that stool, um, now knowing what I know through the certification process, if I were him, I'd be sitting on that school stool looking at like, what is a liability here for these kids? Where are they going to get hurt? What is the possibility? And those are things that I've learned through those classes, through the certification that I probably wouldn't have thought of before. And that I really am appreciative of the opportunity for that because it does open your eyes to a lot of things that relate to our field that probably wouldn't be thought of without these classes.
Share with our audience your thoughts and ideas to those ADs out there that may be on the fence. Well, I'm thinking about getting my CAA. Well, I don't know if I want to, or I'll do it next year. What's your advice to those people that are unsure?
Always say do it for sure. Again, just having taken the courses, what it really, really was eye-opening from the Title IX classes to the liability to the lawsuits that they talked about. I mean, in some of these courses, there was one course in particular that focused on lawsuits that other schools have faced due to whatever it is, whether it's Title IX infractions or practices in extreme heat that they weren't doing correctly, whatever it was. And I again, I go back and I'll probably say it 5 times. It's not just watching ball games. It's keeping kids safe. It's making sure everything's fair. It's, keeping budgets, all of the things that I have learned through taking the certification course that I didn't know before, or maybe I knew, but just maybe not so much in depth. That really has helped. And I feel like I have a better grasp on what I'm doing for taking these classes.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that. What's the favorite part of your job, Lindsay?
Oh, definitely working with the kids. Yeah, I love working with the kids. Um, it's in a small school, especially, I encourage all athletic directors to try and learn the kids' names. It's probably a little bit easier in a setting like mine where the school's a little smaller. But one of my favorite parts of my job, my office is on the third floor by the lunchroom at our school. And my assistant and I always try to make sure we're there during lunch because the kids know I keep a very well-stocked snack drawer. So they always come in and hang out in the office. But sometimes I will just look up and I mean, I don't have a large office, but I have 12 or 15 kids just hanging out in there. And they're there because they want to be there. I mean, they grab their snack and they can leave, but they don't. They hang out in there, which tells me that we are forging relationships that make them want to be there, which again, at our school is one of the biggest things and the biggest obstacles that we have. So the more I make kids feel like they want to be there, the more the kids feel like we are invested in what they're doing as students and as athletes. I mean, there's just nothing better than making these relationships with the students.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Let me ask a question totally off script here, because all of my attendance at APA Draper is watching my grandchildren play junior jazz there.
Mhm.
And so my question to you is, how far is your office from the gym? Because I'm familiar where the gym is.
Well, it's kind of funny you asked that. So I have my upstairs office on the third floor that I use during the day, but I keep a desk in the office that's in the gym, in the main gym there, at our high school building. Just again, I like to be accessible to the kids, and I'm accessible to the kids on the third floor during lunchtime, but I'm accessible to the athletes after school more in the gym office. So I kind of I keep both of those places open.
Perfect. Let's finish with a couple of questions, Lindsey. The first is this, and I realize you're into athletic administration 4 years, but if you were to talk to a brand new athletic administrator and give them a piece of advice, two pieces of advice, and they need to follow Lindsey's advice in order to become a success, what would that be?
Well, number one, I think one of the lessons that I struggle with because my husband will use the word stubborn. I call it very independent, is I like to do things myself. And when I first started, it was hard to do everything myself because there are so many moving parts to being an athletic director. I was constantly worried I was forgetting something. Did I schedule the refs? Is the bus coming at the right time? Did I send it to the right school? What did I pay the coaches on time? Whatever it is. It was very, very overwhelming at the beginning because I was trying to manage it all myself. I know there are a lot of athletic directors out there, especially at small schools, who may not have assistants or secretaries. I didn't at the start. I have learned that list keeping for me was very important. And as I would accomplish things, just cross them off. But that helped me feel like I wasn't drinking from a fire hose all the time, so to speak. And again, the second thing I think would be just to make those relationships with the kids. The job is just so much more fulfilling when you have had personal interactions with the kids on the field or in the gym, or they feel like they are excited to see you show up. That's one of the best things is you're not just some person sitting on a stool at the end of the gym. They want you there to watch them perform, and we want to be there to watch them perform.
Great answer. Thank you so much for sharing. We'll finish with this. Lindsey, what questions should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
Oh gosh. Maybe how long you intend on doing this,
Well,
and
then
I
how
think
long do you intend on staying as the AD?
it's kind of a joke at our place. It's like as long as they'll keep me, I guess. I really do love my job. I love sports. I've always loved sports. It's always been a part of who I am and my childhood and my college life, all of it. And I love being able to hopefully make a positive impact on kids. Teenage years aren't easy. I think we can all agree on that. It's a tough time of life. They think they have it all figured out, but as adults, we know they don't have it all figured out. And it's nice to be able to be there and help them along the way while they're doing something that they love, which is playing sports. So
Great answer. With that, that wraps up this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Lindsey Bluth-Baldwin, Certified Athletic Administrator, the Director of Athletics at American Preparatory Academy in Draper. Lindsey, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
thank you for having me.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.